So let's talk about the wrist, because I see lots of mistakes with golfers manipulating wrist positions, and hopefully this video will really clear up exactly what it is that should happen. Now, the first thing is when you start your golf swing, there should be a degree of wrist hinge, this type of motion here, right? And what that does is that triggers that club moving back like so. Now, to be a little bit more specific, what happens when we hold the club is, can you notice the way that my lead arm and the club shaft are not in line with one another? Once I introduce that wrist hinge on the back of my right wrist, you can now see the way the club shaft is in line with my lead arm, and that basically is the necessary amount of wrist hinge you need to feel inside the swing. Now, if I get set up, imagine I'm swinging towards the wall, I do my little bit of wrist hinge. Okay, now from here what's going to happen is I'm going to have an element of external rotation of my right arm coupled with a bit of upper body turn to get the club into a good takeaway position. Wrist cock in the backswing. You've got to be careful with this. Your trail wrist should be hinging like so. It should not be consciously introducing an element of radial deviation, which is a sort of vertical movement like this. In fact, you don't really want to be doing it with the left hand either. You see, what will happen is once you take the club back to this hip high position, the only way you can advance the golf swing now is for this arm to bend. And when this arm bends, your left arm is going to induce a natural amount of wrist cock. As long as you've got a decent grip, okay, and you're not gripping the club completely wrong, then when you fold this arm, that's how your wrist cock is going to happen. And that's a really important thing to note, right? Now, second thing, what about the releasing of the angles coming into the downswing? This is pretty much a natural phenomena, right? You don't need to consciously induce ulnar deviation, and you arguably don't really want to consciously try and hold on to a wrist angle either. It's all about shaping of the hand path. So for example, if I'm somebody who has a sort of casting motion, okay, like so, then what's going to happen is I'm going to lose all my wrist angles too early. If I can move my upper arm to the side of my body, this will basically hold on to the wrist cock, which means I can deliver it much later. So there's a couple of training aids that will help, right? So one of them is the Swing Buddy rope trainer. And what you wouldn't do if you were swinging this is try and really be wristy. You would think just about lifting it up and down, up and down. And that's the first thing to think about that backswing position. It's not about sort of setting the club into these awkward sort of positions and then expecting to swing. It's just going to get lost. The second one is our sort of what we now like to class as our strike one. This is important, right? Because what you're trying to do in the downswing is, like I say, you don't want to sort of hold onto wrist positions, try and drive the elbow unnecessarily forward and try and hit the ball like this. It's just not that way. It's very much a straightening motion. But what the strike one encourages you to do is, whilst you get this feeling of sort of liberating yourself and pulling your arms down, you can see the way my upper arm has to move to the side of my body to ensure that this misses my left hip. So as I hit the ball, this can just strike me on the rib cage at the point of impact, therefore giving me the correct wrist positions. See you soon.